I'd like to bring this meeting to order. Councillor Kenny, you're on the phone, so when there is a vote, you are only going to let us know if you're opposed. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's right.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
I already sent it in, but I have one for, I don't have the number in front of me right now, Donna, but for the community grants.
Go ahead to our city clerk.
It's item 16C, Community Grants 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, adoption of agendas. I have a mover, Councillor Decker, and seconder, Councillor Longo. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. Council meeting minutes, July 21st, 2020. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, seconder, Councillor DeRose. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mayor's remarks. The mandatory mask bylaw passed at the Niagara Regional Council meeting on July 23rd came into effect on July 31st. All that information is available on the regional website as well as our website. On July 27th, Manoj Dawaria, Jason Simpson, and I met with Inspector Sean Dowd, our new 1st District Commander, St. Catharines Thorold, from the Niagara Regional Police to discuss policing issues in our community. He has taken over from Marco Giannico, who has been promoted to the rank of Superintendent District Operations. Inspector Dowd has 32 years of policing experience, most recently as 3rd District Commander, Welland Fonthill, for the past 4 years. On July 28th, I attended the provincial funding announcement for 60 Ormond Street. This Indigenous affordable housing project will consist of a new semi-detached dwelling, and I look forward to its completion and welcoming our new residents. Minister Steve Clark, Municipal Affairs and Housing, made the announcement. MP Vance Badaway and MPP Jeff Birch were among the dignitaries in attendance, along with Manoj Dawaria and Marco Marino from city staff. On August 4th, I attended Premier Ford's funding announcement in Beansville at the CleanWorks facility. CleanWorks Medical and Pure Life Machinery have received a $2 million investment from the province of Ontario to help manufacture a device that sanitizes personal protective equipment. Minister Vic Fidali, Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, along with Regional Chair Bradley and area mayors, were also in attendance. Somebody's mic's on. Okay. The Frontline Worker, Our Heroes T-shirt fundraiser resulted in a check contribution yesterday of $30,000 to the Niagara Health Foundation towards COVID-19 relief. Thank you, Santino Perry, Impact Promotions, and Joe Manella, Heart of Niagara Hotels, for spearheading this outstanding initiative. Congratulations to James Simons on receiving Brock University Alumni Community Engagement Award. James has been involved in many charitable projects, including his own initiative, Toolbox Niagara. And these last two things are just another example of how our community stepped up to the plate and individuals within our community to help out the community during these unprecedented times of COVID-19. And that's the end of my mayor's report. And we'll move into our public meeting. Zoning bylaw amendment, official plan amendment, revision of draft plan conditions, and red line to the draft plan approved Rolling Meadows subdivision, phases 13 to 15. Opening remarks and appeal information. This public meeting is being held pursuant to the provisions of sections 17, 22, 34, and 51 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended. City planning staff and the applicant's agent will present information on the applications this evening. Council will receive and consider all comments received at the public meeting. No decision on this application is being made this evening. There may be the opportunity to appeal council's decision if criteria outlined in the Planning Act are met. Official plan amendment. Any of the following, no later than 20 days after giving notice, may appeal the decision by filing with the city the notice of appeal that must set out the reasons for the appeal, accompanied by the tribunal's fee. A person or public body who, before the bylaw was passed, made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to council, the minister, the appropriate approval authority, if the plan is exempt from approval. In the case of a request to amend the city's official plan, the person or public body that made the request. If a person or public body did not make an oral submission at a public meeting or provide written submissions to council before the bylaw was passed, the tribunal will determine if there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Any of the following zoning bylaw amendment. Any of the following no later than 20 days after giving notice may appeal the decision by filing with the city the notice of appeal that must set out the reasons for the appeal accompanied by the tribunal's fee. The applicant, a person or public body who before the bylaw was passed made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to council, the minister. If a person or public body did not make an oral submission at a public meeting or provide written submissions to council before the bylaw was passed, the tribunal will determine if there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Plan of subdivision. Any of the following no later than 20 days after giving notice may appeal the decision, the lapsing provision, or any of the conditions to the tribunal by filing with the city the notice of appeal that must set out the reasons for the appeal accompanied by the tribunal's fee. The applicant, a public body who before council made its decision made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to council. A person listed in subsection 5148.3 of the Planning Act who before council made its decision made oral or written submissions to council, the minister, or the municipality in which the land is located. If a person or public body did not make an oral submission at a public meeting or provide a written submission to council before the decision was given, the tribunal will determine if there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. For further information on appeals and/or preserving your appeal rights, please speak with the city planner. Now up first, we have city planner's presentation. Julie Hanna will now present information on the applications received on behalf of the city, and I'll turn this over to Julie.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to present the applications received for Rolling Meadows subdivision, phases 13 through 15, in regards to a red line revision to the draft plan, revision to the draft plan conditions, and official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. Next slide, please. The location of the Rolling Meadows development is bounded by Highway 20, more commonly called Lundy's Lane, Highway 58, and Thorold Town Line Road. The image on the screen illustrates the various phases of the development. Phases 1 through 12 have been registered. Phases 13 through 15, which are the subject of the applications, are illustrated in the various colors before you. And the future phases of the development not being considered this evening are to the east of the Hydro 1 easement. Next slide, please. In regards to the red line revision to draft plan, the following is being requested: to remove the blocks from the plan to become additional lands of owner, a block that currently is stormwater management facility, which is a block north of Sunset Way, south of Highway 58, residential use blocks that are north of Spring Crest Way and south of Uppers Lane. Amending block 1276, which was a high-density block, to multiple street townhouse blocks and to introduce a street, and that area is located north of Uppers Lane. To remove portions of Selection Heights and Velvet Way road allowances and amend block 1239 for a larger high-density residential block, and that is the block at the intersection of Uppers Lane and Barker Parkway. Enlarging block 1380, which is a park block. Adjusting the location of the following roads and the adjacent lotting for Velvet Way, Selection Heights, Brighton Lane, Vanilla Cream Avenue, Sugar May Avenue, and Discovery Drive. Adjusting the location of block 1276, natural features, and removing a portion of Discovery Drive and introducing 3 new streets. All of the blocks and road allowances that I just listed are illustrated on the plan in red. Next slide, please. The city is also giving notice that the city will be revising the existing draft plan conditions, and that is to update 2 new city processes, to update the references to the city's official plan and the transportation master plan regarding right-of-way widths and designs, to include clauses to address the acquisition of Hydro One lands for municipal right-of-ways, to identify the blocks being conveyed to the city, to update the responsibilities of the region and the MPCA, to include a condition regarding the installation of works and the provision of security for Barker Parkway, and general updates to the text references and corrections to numbering. Next slide, please. In regards to the official plan amendment being requested, there is 1 block that is proposed to be redesignated from Village Square Commercial and Open Space and Parks to residential, and this is to allow for future development of residential units on that block. Next slide, please. In regards to the zoning bylaw amendment being requested to amend bylaws 2140-97 and 60-2019, the illustration illustrates the proposed lotting that would permit street townhouse units with a site-specific zone on the blocks which form the current block 1236. Again, that's north of Uppers Lane, to permit future development on block 1239, which is at the corner of Uppers Lane and Barker Parkway, to permit single detached dwellings of various lot sizes with site-specific zones. The requests include reducing the exterior side yard of a dwelling from 4.5 meters to 3 meters, increasing the maximum width of a private garage attached to the main building from 55% to 70%, and increasing the principal entrance setback from a garage from 1.5 meters to 2.0 meters. There is also a request to introduce a new site-specific R1D zone, which in addition to the above request would allow, if granted, a reduction in the minimum lot area from 250 meters square to 235 meters square, a reduction in the minimum lot frontage from 9 meters to 8.2 meters, and a reduction on one of the interior side yards from 1.2 meters to 0.6 meters. In addition, there are zones to permit street townhouse units and block townhouse units, and again, they have similar site-specific regulations. Next slide, please. In regard to phase 12, it was identified by planning staff that there was one exception that was not mapped correctly in our new zoning bylaw, and so we will be initiating this correction at this time, and that is to zone lands on Charm Place and Barker Parkway to the R1D-34 zone. Next slide, please. The city has received numerous comments to date. From our engineering department, the following comments were received: to have trails connecting the parks, to confirm density, to realign Uppers Lane to the existing right-of-way, to confirm the location and use of the stormwater management pond that is proposed to be removed, as it was critical for drainage of the whole development, and to ensure parks follow the city's Parks and Recreation Plan. Cogeco, Canada Post, and the District School Board had no issues with any of the proposed changes, along with Hydro One, and they indicate that the draft plan conditions are consistent. The MTO supports the development and the increase in development density, and they ask that regard be given to the existing traffic impact study. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has no concerns with the realignment of the natural feature block, and note that a work permit is required. The Niagara region indicates that the modifications meet provincial regional policies. They outline study updates that are required, and note that the official plan amendment does not require regional council approval. Planning staff have received the following comments from the public since the council agenda was sent to you. The Walker brothers have prepared a letter that will be circulated that indicates that they would like to have further discussions in regards to the future development block, in particular technical review studies to discuss building setbacks, landscape buffers, site and building design measures, and this is in regards to the proposed quarry development adjacent to the subdivision site. Larkin, who is representing an adjacent landowner, has concerns regarding the deviation of Uppers Lane. They note that a draft plan condition requires it to be relocated onto the road allowance, and they state that the application is premature at this time. Tim Bonin indicated that he would prefer block 1236 to be rezoned to permit both singles and towns. His concerns include the speed of traffic. He notes that parking is bad and this will likely increase with more units. He is also concerned with the appearance of rentals, which may potentially reduce property values of adjacent properties. The application was circulated for comment as per the Planning Act requirements. We will update council if additional comments are received. This concludes my presentation. I thank you, and I will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Julie. I open the floor for any questions. I can't see the screen yet. One sec. Okay, I will now see if there's any questions for Julie. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I thank you, Julie, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Up next is the applicant's presentation. William Highcop will now present information on applications received on behalf of the applicant. And I'll turn it over to William.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and anyone tuning in tonight. I'd just ask that my presentation be put up if that's possible. As noted, my name is William Highcoop. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants, and I'm the agent representing the owner of the Rolling Meadows subdivision for these proposed applications. As noted, these applications include a red line revision to the existing draft plan of subdivision, accompanied by an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. Thanks for getting that up. Over the last year, since the approvals of the Phase 12 red line revision discussions with the existing builder in the Rolling Meadows subdivisions has continued. The proposal has been prepared to address the continued demand for market-specific changes to the existing lotting fabric. The intent of these applications is to make the necessary adjustments to the next phases of development, moving north from Highway 20 into phases 13 and 14 along Barker Parkway, and phase 15 located adjacent to phase 11 on the west end of Uppers Lane. Can I get a slide change, please? And one more slide, please. To the north end of the plan, you can see the phases 1 through 11 along Highway 58. This area has been constructed to date. To the south along Highway 20 or Lundy's Lane, you can see the phase 12 area, which is currently under construction. Above that, moving north along Barker Parkway, you can see the proposed adjustments for phase 13, 14, and to the west along Uppers Lane, you can see the proposed phase 15 area. Future phases include the main Barker Parkway and Uppers Lane intersection, as well as lands to the east of the existing hydro corridor. Slide. As Julie noted, associated with the red line changes is an OPA to allow for the appropriate location of the high density residential block, and a zoning bylaw amendment to update the zoning to adjust the lotting fabric with some site specific changes as requested by some of the builders moving forward in the development. Slide. Next steps, following the public meeting, at some point staff will bring a report forward for council's consideration. If approved, the owner would like to move forward with engineering design and clearance of the conditions. Once approvals are in place from the city, region, and MPCA, he's hoping to get to construction as soon as possible. We received the comments on the application, and we recognize and agree that the revision of Uppers Lane is premature until we understand the position of the school boards. Just trying to keep it brief tonight, so that concludes my presentation. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Are there any questions for William? Seeing none, I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Oral submissions. Now at this time, is there anyone present who wishes to speak on the applications received? Your comments will now be received. Please provide your name and address for the public record. Do we have one speaker?
Hello, may I speak?
Yes, well, is Michael Larkin? Michael, please state your name and address for the public record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Michael Larkin from Larkin Land Use Planners, located at 849 Gorham Street in Newmarket. We represent Forest Holding, which has lands and applications before the city to the north and east of the lands that are currently subject to this subdivision revision. Our concern really is focused only on the alignment of Uppers Grove. We recognize there's a condition, I think it's number 80, which requires Uppers Lane and Street 2, or Uppers Lane Street 2, to be located on the original and existing road allowance, which is what we are requesting. And the only comment to that is we would request that the draft plan of subdivision be amended to clearly illustrate that this will in fact happen, that Uppers Lane will be maintained in its original road allowance. Thank you, sir.
And that's all, Michael? Is that it?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Michael? Seeing none, I thank you for your presentation, Michael. Closing remarks and closing of the meeting. This fulfills the requirement of the Planning Act well, excuse me, I'll go back. Is there anyone else that is registered to speak here? There's no further speakers? Okay. Closing remarks and closing a meeting. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, pursuant to Section 17, 22, 34, and 51. Please provide a letter with your personal contact information requesting to receive notice of council's decision to the city clerk if interested. As such, the public meeting portion of these applications is now closed. And I'll move on to motions for council support. City of Thorold, Declaration of Mutual Commitment and Friendship, referred to Councillor Neal, moved by Councillor Neal and seconded by Councillor Hanley, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just read the resolution, not the 50 or 60 whereases that go along with it. That the resolution passed by the Council of the Region of Niagara at its meeting of July 23rd, 2020, requesting the AMO OFIFC Declaration of Mutual Commitment and Friendship circulated to the local area municipalities of Niagara be received and supported.
Any speakers to this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion to receive and file minutes or adopt recommendations of council, committees, and boards. Minutes to review for information purposes. Thorold Runway and Recognition Committee minutes of the March 5th, 2020 meeting. I have a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we move on to statement by councillors, and I have Councillor Hanley up, and you're first with Morningstar Mill, DQ Road.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, since I put in this request a couple weeks ago, I see that there'd been some fencing, and since then, some of the problems that I thought that were occurring, and that because it seemed to be that the city of Thorold was being a lot more proactive than the city of St. Catharines, but since then, I can see that it's now changed somewhat. The last weekend or so wasn't as bad as the previous weekends because I had gone down there one day and I seen that it was our bylaw enforcement officer that was actually on site and there wasn't anybody from the city of St. Catharines there. So I'm thinking that since that time that's been rectified and the current situation that was before us is no longer as bad as it was.
And thank you, Councillor Hanley. That's the correct. It's a lot better than it was at the beginning. Drinking in public parks, Councillor Hanley.
Okay, drinking in public parks. Battle of Beaver Dams Park, been having several complaints and that stuff of the consumption of alcohol, but I do know, I believe that unless the municipality of Thorold ourselves passed a bylaw that did not permit drinking in public parks through you to the clerk, that it actually is permitted to do so. But there's, I think, stipulation there that there may have to be like as a picnic, not just consuming alcohol.
I'll turn this over. Thank you, and I'll turn that over. I'll turn it over to our CEO, Manoj Delwaria. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we have to designate a park if we have to allow public to drink in park. And at this point in time, we have not designated any park where. So if someone is drinking in public, it is illegal. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know what the
I'll turn that. I got further comment here from Curtis Dray, our manager of Community Services and Facilities. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we do have a policy in place, which is 200-11, which does stipulate that the CAO is correct that we do not permit alcohol consumption in the parks without a liquor permit.
Without
okay. Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to know because, you know, I just wanted to make sure. So on that note, there is some videotape out there and that stuff. It is an ongoing daily thing. I viewed it myself and I've seen it from one of my family members' residents that it does occur during the daytime on an ongoing basis. And just wanting to know what we be able to do about it. As far as policing, can bylaw be involved? Because there's also, during the video I witnessed, there's no social distancing going on, and people are actually, don't wanna go to the park during the daytime, and it happens every day. Beer store opens, they go over there and they sit in the park and they drink all day.
Okay, and I'll again turn this over to our CAO, explain the situation and how we enforce it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, if there is a social distancing aspect of it, our bylaw officers can go in there. And if our bylaw officers get complaints as well, they can go in there as well. But sometimes it is after hours, then certainly police can be notified as well. Thank you.
So are we using the same process as we use, and it's listed on the website? If it's between certain hours, it's our bylaw. After hours, it's the NRP.
Yeah, and I've also trying to tell people, I know through our contact at Thorold.ca, you know, if it was something that, you know, wasn't of an immediate nature and that's something they wanted to make a comment to see if there was a follow-up, that was something else they would be able to do, I believe. So that's okay.
That's correct.
I wasn't sure we had a policy, and I hadn't asked anybody, but I was just going by what provincial legislation was and wanted what we had in place for it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Thorold Tunnel pedestrian issues. Councillor Hanley again.
Again, that's been an ongoing issue. I know that there's a taxi service that is available, but I believe that the service ends at either 11 or 12 o'clock at night. It's not an all-night service. Again, videotaped, have videotape of people walking through the tunnel on that little curb there, and one with a guy on a bike and the truck's going by him, and a big truck, not a small truck. And being in the tunnel, that creates a vacuum aspect. And you know what we could do as a municipality through the Ministry of Transportation or through our Director of Public Works. Can nighttime service be extended? Can there be some type of safety barrier put up that pedestrians can't get in, or what? Like, there needs to be something, because it is occurring. And if that one side of the tunnel takes as long as the other side of the tunnel, it's only a matter of time before we have a serious incident. That's just my personal feeling.
Go ahead, I'll let Manoj speak on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. MTO has actually put signs on either side of the tunnel. They have the bus shuttle service in the daytime, and I think after hours as well. If you call those numbers, they will make a shuttle available. Sean Dunsmore, I can ask him to provide additional details on it. He was in contact with MTO, and they have assured him that the service is pretty much 24/7. During the daytime, the shuttle is there, and I've seen the shuttle is usually parked on the east side. There's a red shuttle, St. Catherine's taxi service. Typically, the uptake for that is very little based on the discussions that we had with them. But I will let Sean provide additional details because he had a chance to speak with both the taxi service and also the MTO. Thank you.
Okay, on that note, if we could also, I know that the signs are there, is possibly if we could maybe near our Thorold South corridor, maybe on Beaver Dams Road there or on Niagara Falls Road area, some type of sign that's there warning the residents there. Because then it's a double warning. You're getting it leaving those out because it's obviously that's where the individuals are coming from. And if we could get some type of community message out there, because that's what's happening. It's people trying to get back on the other side of the canal, and understand sometimes it's actually people that have gotten off of work and they're using their own form of transportation. And at that time of night, when they've come across there's been nobody there to drive them across. So they've had to drive through the tunnel on their bike.
Manoj, I'll let you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Handley. Additional communication certainly will be helpful. What we can actually do is we can actually do a media release as well to notify and also be in touch with MTO so that if they can put additional signs on additional roads as well, that will be helpful. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Delegations to report. We're going to move on to number 14. This is Bruce Morey, consultant of IBI Group. He's going to speak on Director of Public Works Community Services Report, PWCS 2020-43, which is the Transportation Master Plan presentation. And I'll turn this over to Bruce.
Thank you. Are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Can everybody hear Bruce?
Okay, let me just share the screen and I will pull up the presentation. Oops. Pardon me while I try to find the presentation. My apologies, I can't seem to find my first time using Zoom and sharing. Thank you. Are you able to see this screen?
Yeah.
My apologies. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to present the Thorold Transportation Master Plan this evening. If you could switch to the next slide, please. My name is Bruce Maury from IBI Group, and I am the project director for the study. I'm joined by my colleague, Zach Henderson. The Transportation Master Plan, or TMP, is a strategic planning document that will guide the evolution of the transportation network over the next 20 years to support mobility, economic and quality of life objectives of the city. And it defines improvement projects, policies, and programs to meet Thorold's future transportation needs and considers all modes of transportation, including walking, cycling, and public transit. It includes an implementation plan with actions over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. Next slide, please. This is Thorold's first transportation master plan, and it's timely given the need to plan to accommodate significant growth that is foreseen in the coming years and the new emerging trends that we're seeing. It also reflects change from a more rural to a more urban character, and it will provide mobility to all people of all ages and all abilities. It seeks to improve safety for all road users, connect residents with businesses and major trip generators, integrate with land use and development and projects so that desirable small town character is maintained. And it emphasizes affordability, cost effectiveness, and sustainability. Next slide, please. The transportation vision provides the conceptual framework for the TMP, and it builds on the city's existing official plan and was developed in consultation with the general public and stakeholders. Next, please. The transportation vision is broken down into the following 4 objectives for the study, again emphasizing the same themes noted earlier: multimodal, supporting all users and businesses, quality of life, prosperity, affordability. Next slide. The study started in early 2019 and follows the requirements of the phase 1 and 2 of the municipal class environmental assessment process. It included 3 rounds of public and stakeholder consultation at the start of the study in March 2019, and we obtained input on needs and opportunities in the middle of the study in July 2019 to present and solicit feedback on the preliminary recommendations and strategies, and in late November 2019 to present and solicit feedback on the draft final recommendations. After this, the draft final report was prepared and went through a mandatory 30-day public review period, and no objections were raised. Next, please. The main themes heard through the consultation process are listed in this slide, and we examined them in the TMP, with the key areas including multimodal, connections between downtown and Thorold South, walking and cycling facilities, and public transit. And with this consultation input was also reflected in the vision objectives that I noted earlier. Next slide. So let me now move on to the TMP recommendations. Next slide. The following 10 focused areas were studied in the TMP, with recommendations for each, and each forming a chapter in the final report. I'll briefly cover the 4 major focus areas in the following slides. Next slide. So the key recommendations for the pedestrian network include filling in gaps in the sidewalk network on urban roads, and that'll be at a cost of approximately $1.36 million, or 13.6 kilometers of missing sidewalk. We also have 2 new pedestrian cycling bridges across Highway 406 and the Welland Canal. Both are recommended, but both involve costs and complexity that will require additional studies. Next slide. The TMP identifies a near-term priority network reflecting quick win projects to be implemented over the next 10 years. And that will provide a kind of a complete network without gaps in urban areas for the cycling network. And this includes 10.6 kilometers of bike lanes and 18.6 kilometers of multi-use trails at a cost of approximately $5.75 million. Next slide. So building on the priority cycling network, the ultimate network is the long-term network to be implemented over 20 years and coordinated with major road rehabilitation and reconstruction work that will be ongoing. And doing so in parallel will reduce impacts and costs. This includes paved shoulders, multi-use trails, and bike lanes, and the cost be approximately $14.1 million. Next slide. The transit recommendations include increasing service frequencies in the existing transit service area that is currently provided through an agreement with St. Catharines Transit and currently covers Thorold proper and Thorold South. It's also recommended to provide new transit service to the growing Port Robinson West area and to do so through a service agreement with Welland Transit. Next slide. The recommended road network improvements include 5.4 kilometers of regional road capacity improvements on Merritt Road and Highway 20, and this confirms the findings from the previous Niagara Region Transportation Master Plan, and these facilities fall under the region's jurisdiction. We also have 9.4 kilometers of municipal road upgrades, 9.7 kilometers of new collector roads in new growth areas, and we also have 6.9 kilometers of new local roads. And these kind of run north-south on each side of the canal and will provide additional access to these areas as they get blocked off by train traffic and would otherwise be inaccessible for fire ambulance service. So it's important to provide that additional access. Next slide. So a complete streets policy is a foundational part of this TMP. And complete streets is where streets are designed for users of all ages and abilities and to balance the needs of all transportation modes, not just cars. And there's an emphasis on walking, cycling, and public transit. Complete streets also incorporate streetscape features to make an attractive environment in all road rights of way where you implement complete streets. And you would implement the complete streets policies through the official plan process so that it's an inherent part of the process and not an afterthought. Next slide, please. An updated road classification system is also needed as a complement to complete streets. And there'll be more refinement to differentiate between rural and urban roads in the system. Also, we've added a new subclassification for minor local roads to capture dead ends, cul-de-sacs, and other short streets. Next slide, please. TMP implementation will be phased over the short, medium, and long terms with the capital cost shown in this table for the major infrastructure categories. And over our planning horizon, the total capital cost is almost $60 million, or what works out to approximately $3 million per year. So this roughly compares to an annual capital road budget of $3.75 million average over the last 5 capital budgets. However, that $3.75 million includes road rehabilitation and reconstruction costs that are not included in the TMP capital costs. So on a more apples-to-apples basis, historic capital spending for expansion and upgrades has been approximately $2.3 million, and that better compares to the $3 million cost in the TMP. Next slide, please. So in summary, the TMP is a practical and affordable plan. It sets the city up to accommodate future development and economic growth and to meet the future transportation needs of Thorold residents and businesses. It supports sustainable transportation modes, enhances mobility for all ages and users, and incorporates the current best practices in transportation planning, design, and policy. Next slide, please. So with approval of the TMP, the next steps would be to integrate the projects into capital budgets, update appropriate official plan and other policies, and initiate studies to advance the major projects by undertaking environmental assessment studies. The plan should be monitored on an ongoing basis to ensure that progress is being made on an annual basis, and with the plan updated every 5 to 10 years. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm going to open the floor up now to questions for Bruce. Can I get main screen up? Yep. Okay. So is there any questions for Bruce? I got Councillor Sentence. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce, for your presentation. It was fantastic. I just wanted to say thanks for all the hard work, and I'm looking forward to this. And tying it in with the recreation master plan too was very smart. So I think a lot of people are looking forward to the future with this. So thank you again.
I had Councillor DeRose with his hand up. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose. You're muted.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Very well done. Can I just ask a question? I had to step out for a second, but was there anything said about speed limits on city roads?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our road classification system has decreases in road speeds on many of the arterial roads and municipal roads to reflect the urbanization and reflecting the safety aspects. So that has been updated as part of the plan.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're saying.
Yes, we've reduced, there is reductions in speed to make it more appropriate for urban uses. And that's reflected in the road classification system that is in the plan.
Thank you.
It's in the plan, Councillor DeRose. Anyone else? I had one question I wanted to ask, and that's related, Bruce, I don't know if you're aware that the region's going to be going to a regional model of public transit. And so I think that might alleviate the concerns we have in Port Robinson West, where you were talking about Welland Transit, because hopefully at some point we'll be working in unison under one transit system. And I think that will go a long way in serving the needs of those growth areas.
For you, Mr. Mayor, that sounds tremendous news.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I thank you, Bruce, for your presentation. Thank you so much.
Good, Mayor. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Consent reports. I got a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson. Does anyone want to pull any reports? Seeing none, we're going to move them all together. That's consent reports A through H. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We move on to discussion reports, and we have DF 2020-24. I have a mover, Councillor Neal, seconder, Councillor Sentence. Cancellations. First of all, I'll turn that over to our Director of Finance, Maria Morrow. I'll let you do the reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that Council approve the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes under the corresponding sections of the Municipal Act for the accounts detailed in the attached report.
Is there any questions for our Director of Finance regarding this? Seeing none, then, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. PWCS 2020-43, and that's what the presentation was regarding, and that's the adoption of the Transportation Master Plan. I'll turn this over to Curtis. Are you bringing this forward? Sean. Who is Sean? Sean, are you there? Oh, how are you, Sean?
Good,
I'll turn that over to our Manager of Engineering, Sean Dunsmore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that the Transportation Master Plan be approved and that staff be directed to incorporate the recommendations into the 10-year capital forecast.
Okay.
So concludes the report.
Okay, so we had a mover, Councillor Longo, seconder, Councillor DeRosa. Are there any questions for our Manager of Engineering? Thank you for the, it's a great report, and I'll take it to the vote now. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I think this is a great step forward for the... We've already been doing that a lot, eh, Sean? And as you're doing roads now and road reconstruction, we're looking at, we implement different complete streets. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we've been taking a more general approach. It's going to be a little more focused now that we have this master plan in place.
Thank you. So up next, I have PWCS 2020-46. I have a mover, Councillor Decker, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson, and it's regarding Community Grants 2020. And I'll turn this over to Curtis Dray, our Manager of Community Services and Facilities. Go ahead, Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is one, that Council accepts the grant allocation recommendations put forth by the Community Grants Evaluation Committee for Recreation, Arts and Culture, Tourism and Economic Development Grants and Committee of Council Budgets. And two, that staff be directed to review the community grant policy and, where suitable, based on consultant recommendations, negotiate multi-year service agreements for annual programming event for the event for the balance of the term of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Do we have any questions for Curtis? Up first, I have Councillor DeRose. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
For you, Mr. Mayor. Curtis, can you just explain number 2 and the justification of it and what exactly it means?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So under the Parks and Rec Master Plan, one of the recommendations that came back that we've reviewed is look for potentially partnering with some of these groups and possibly a fee for service type agreement or a service deliverable model that we can actually put measurables to and then substitute services for fees essentially.
Is that to whose advantage is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be beneficial to both the city and the user groups because at this point we're essentially guaranteeing an incoming source of recreation or service that can be provided by these different groups within the community, and in exchange we're providing basically a guarantee of funding.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Durant.
With the uncertainty of COVID, I'm very surprised that staff would recommend a multi-year service agreement at this point. I don't see any benefit to the taxpayer at this point. How about if services are not being offered like they are now? That be due to COVID, it might last longer. We have no idea. So there's so many uncertainties. I think that would be negligible if we get into an agreement, a financial agreement over the rest of council's term, which would be a little over 2 years. Any thoughts, Curtis, on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be something that would have to be done through the negotiating process and taken into consideration.
Does that answer your question, Councillor DeRose?
Yeah, that doesn't. I just wanted to, yeah, I've got another question after that one, but that's fine for now.
Go ahead, finish up.
Okay, I was surprised the applicants were given an opportunity to provide program service updates to yourself to present tonight at the meeting, and not one organization submitted by August 1st. So I was a little bit concerned about that. Was there communication done through emails, or, because I'm surprised that none of them would have wanted to forward any information of the services they're providing up until this point, so they can be scrutinized as to whether we're getting value for the money.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, email was sent out to all the participants that were requesting funding. One group did attempt to meet with us. However, due to circumstances beyond our control, that meeting never took place, but you were correct that no documentation was submitted as a result.
Thank you.
Okay, I had Councillor Neal up next. Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Thorold Community Activities Group was a specific one that I wanted to talk about. Because I know they were going to make a presentation at the last council meeting until it was deferred. So I know that they wanted to talk to you. Did they end up talking to you, or is that the organization you couldn't get a hold of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. TCAG was unable to meet with us due to circumstances, and we did not meet with them. Okay,
the reason why I asked is that last year in the cash, they got $20,000 last year, and you're stating $13,050 this year. And I know that they do a lot of programming that normally cities look after. St. Catharines looks after a lot of those types of programs that the TCAG does, and I know a number of other communities do the same thing. And they are, you know, a service that is extended by the type of programming that they do, and they're doing a summer kids program, which is unbelievable during this period of time. But they're doing it, and I realize that they don't have the pool, so the in-kind services for the pool is taken out. But my comment and question is, why did you move it from $20,000 down to $13,000? When, from my point of view, that they're doing a service that we do not have. And it's a good service, and there's a lot of programming that they do that normally we would do if we had it in our budget.
So I'll ask Curtis to respond to that. Go ahead.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, there's an evaluation process, which there's criteria laid out that the committee that reviews these submissions review and basically grade. So based on this year's circumstances with pandemic, what could be offered, can't be offered, and also their submissions in general based on the specific criteria. They were rated as such and percentage put towards the number.
Well, carrying on, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's doing a disservice to them by not at least sitting down with them, and I understand why you weren't able to do that. But they do a very good service and have for years regarding the extra programming that they do above and beyond what we're able to give our community. And I think we need to sit down with them before you go ahead and take $7,000 off their budget for all the programming that they do for the city of Thorold. And my suggestion is that you sit down with them before we pass at least the TCAG's portion of this grant to make sure that before we pass it, that you have talked to them and come back with another recommendation.
Do you want to respond to that, or is that, Councillor Neal, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we review with the TCAG the programming to make sure that they are getting proper funding from the city of Thorold for the programming that they do that we don't provide.
So do you want to just pull that particular one and we'll move forward on the others? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I have Councillor Decker. So we have a motion on the floor to move forward with the rest of the grants and to that our staff meet with TCAG on that particular grant. Am I correct? Councillor Neal.
That is correct.
Does anyone want to speak to that motion? Councillor DeRose.
For you, Mr. Mayor, I thought the evaluation committee did a pretty good job, and they spent a lot of time on it and had an actual criteria. Not whether we do appreciate TCAG and love what they're doing, but I think you have to go by staff's recommendation here, and it spells it out in the report, exactly what they did to evaluate this, and they did it for everybody. And I don't understand how you can ask for just as much money when services were not provided for several months up to this point. You see there's a summer camp, that's great, but I totally disagree with your motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hanley. You're muted. Okay.
Myself too, when the grant process is first set forth, a submission is made, and that submission is made and monies are allotted on that submission. It's obviously the submission was made for 2020, but the Thorold Community Activities Group hasn't been fulfilled as to what monies we as the council were giving to them. And I feel for them too, but I look at this could be bonusing because these monies could be used to be used for losses due to COVID-19. And I think that the evaluation committee done a great job, and that's why we sent it back from the previous meeting. I was actually hoping if they would come to the Thorold Community Activities Group to make the presentation. So I think it's COVID-19 has affected the group's ability of renting their facilities, and it's impacted their finances, and they haven't been able to deliver. They deliver great service, don't get me wrong, but as per the grant process. And I would think that anything over and above that may and could be considered bonusing. And I think the criteria that the staff done was a great job, and that's why we sent it back once, and I'm not supporting the motion.
Anyone else want to speak? I got Councillor Wilson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess my only concern of reconsidering this is if we're reconsidering the committee's decision for one, then we have others that could, in my opinion, then come forward and ask to be reconsidered as well. So I do believe they do more than just the summer camp. They have other things that are going on right now that are open to the committee. Obviously, they weren't able to do that through COVID, like so many other places and businesses weren't. But I would be concerned if we're setting a precedent. So if we pull that from the report to reconsider, then wouldn't those other organizations be able to come to council and say, hey, then you need to change the criteria for us, right? So that would just be my only concern. I don't know if staff wants to answer that or if they're able to answer that at this point. But
Curtis, do you want to answer that, or to why you just couldn't meet, or what happened? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. So we did extend the invitation to all of the user groups to come back. We did tell them what was the recommendation that was going forth to council. We told them it would be tonight. And we gave everybody the equal opportunity to come back and provide additional feedback to essentially, for lack of a better term, plead their case and come back to staff to as why they felt they deserve more additional money. The only group that made an effort to come back and even have a conversation with us was the TCAG. However, again, due to illness, we couldn't actually meet. But again, they did not submit the document that was sent to all of the groups. So if I could make a suggestion, perhaps maybe we could offer the invitation to those groups to come to council and ask for additional funding if they please.
So you're...
Sorry, can I just, I was muted still, I apologize. But does that mean that did they know the amount of money then that they were going to be given when you extended that invitation to them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I seen Councillor Longo with his hand up. Did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the appropriate staff member. Councillor Hanley said something that piqued my interest, and I just want to make sure, would this be considered bonusing? Does he have a point there or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it's right up the alley of bonusing. Perhaps maybe Maria or could respond to that. I don't believe it's actually directly bonusing.
And I'll let the Director of Finance speak on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not 100% certain whether it would be or not. If I had to give my opinion, I would suggest probably it's not. Because of their status, I think they're a not-for-profit organization, that the bonusing section deals strictly with entities that are commercial or industrial in nature. That said, they do run a daycare program, so I can't say with 100% certainty whether it would be or not.
Thank you for that answer. I think I would have to tend to agree with what Councillor Wilson said. Doing it for one and not considering this for others doesn't seem quite fair to me. All the groups do great work, but I think we need to be fair across the board. I know the committee did quite a bit of work here coming up with this, and again, I wouldn't want to just single out one organization and favor them in this situation.
Thank you. Anyone else? I got Councillor Decker. Go ahead, Councillor Decker.
Mayor, I'm going to echo what Councillor Neal said. They do more than a lot of other facilities in Thorold. Now, I'm not going to speak for Dan, but I know that he did have a little issue where he was off ill, so perhaps that is why he couldn't reach out, and he hadn't been at work for the last 2 weeks. So I don't see why we just can't put it off until we can speak with him. I think that they do offer the most programs. They've been running the program since July 1st and have had great response, and now they're extending to offer more programs in the facility. So I'm going to agree with Councillor Neal that perhaps that we can give them a chance to come to council and speak.
Thank you, Councillor Decker. I had...
Terry, can I speak?
Go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, I'm going to support Fred's motion. I'm going to support Fred's motion only for one reason. I think communication is very important, and I mean, at worst, we can get some communication between the group and our staff, and then down the road maybe say we agree with our staff and that's all they should get. But I really like communication, and I'm not saying I'll support them getting more, but I would support the motion to allow them to at least speak for more if the person in charge was sick and the meeting was scheduled but canceled. I'll support the communication for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose.
For you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a problem with this only because they were all given the opportunity to respond by August 1st, and none of them chose to respond by August 1st, which I'm sure was just a paper email back to you. Is that correct, Curtis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was correct. There was a simple chart that was required to be filled out.
So did they respond? And the meeting never took place? Is that what happened?
No, we did not receive any responses other than the attempt to meet with TCAG, which was subsequently canceled, but no submission was ever made.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll just look ahead.
Hello? Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hey.
Did you want to speak?
What I want to say then, if he hadn't sent any documentation and they hadn't, and we're going to extend out the invitation to him, then we give everybody another kick at the can and we send an invitation out to everybody. I don't want to pick and choose here.
Okay.
If they didn't file out the original paperwork and now we're extending an olive branch to them, all the people that didn't apply, we extend the olive branch out to them once again also to come back and ask for more money.
Thank you. And that was the recommendation that Curtis made. Am I correct? Am I correct, Curtis? That if you do, to do that?
Sorry, I missed that.
To put out that invitation to...
Yes.
Are you recommending that is the way we should go?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we could do is if we need to essentially start spending some money. Some of these groups have already spent some money and they're out of pocket. So we do need to put some money in some certain individuals' pockets as a result of the services they have provided. I would suggest maybe approving this report and then coming back at a later date, looking at the additional amounts. Would something like that be of interest?
Okay. So are you okay with that, Councillor Neal, that we approve this report and those that want to make a submission to get the increase that they put in for can come to council?
That would be fine.
You're fine with that? Okay. Is everybody fine with Curtis's recommendation that we approve the report and anybody that wants to come and make a submission to get put in for what they put in for can come and make a presentation to council so that we can put some money in people's hands? Is everybody good with that? Is anybody opposed to that? Okay, so...
Terry, it's John. I'm good with it, but should we not put a date on it?
It's going to come at the next meeting, September 1st.
Next meeting? Okay, thank you.
So the motion, can you, so we're going to pass this report and explain it, Curtis, because I want to make sure we got it right. I don't want any miscues here.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, what we'll do is we will send out communication.
I'll turn it over to our second clerk.
So at this point, is Councillor Neal withdrawing his original motion? His amendment to the original motion?
Councillor
Is
Neal
that
said
being
yes.
withdrawn?
He did say yes. Yes.
So the motion on the floor is that the allocations contained in PWCS 2020-46 be approved and at the current levels, and that should any group not receive their full allocation requested, reach out to staff before September 1st, when a report will come back to council.
Is that good?
To seek the additional funding that they did request.
And if they want, they can make a presentation to council that evening.
Correct.
Okay. Is everybody good with that? Okay. Do I need a mover and a seconder for that? Change? I need a mover. I got I need a mover and a seconder for those changes of what we're doing. I got Councillor DeRose is moving in, a seconder. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to speak on it.
Well, I gotta get the motion first. I need a mover and a seconder. I got Councillor Wilson. Who wants to second that? I got Councillor Wilson who's moving it. Who's seconding it? Someone. Okay, Councillor Longo. Okay, so now you can speak to that motion, Councillor DeRose.
Yeah, I'm still having a problem with number 2 still, Curtis, about the negotiating multi-year service agreements. I think we should still leave it as is, year to year. That's my opinion, especially with the uncertainties we're facing now. Making these long-term commitments or not, personally, I don't recommend them at this point, but any thoughts on your part? Thank you.
I think what he's saying is it's for the term of council, so it would be for 2 years, and he would negotiate any conditions based on the situation, Councillor DeRose. So it's not like for 10 years or 5 years, for the remaining term of council. Are you, do you want to speak further on that? Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And obviously, any agreements that were struck would have to be vetted by council regardless. So.
That's correct. Okay.
And my biggest concern, you did a great report there. I'm just concerned about how things are changing daily. And we don't know, there's so many uncertainties, we don't know what's going to happen next year or the year after. So I'm just trying to be prepared for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. CC 2020-36. I have a mover, Councillor Neal, seconder, Councillor Hanley, and I'll turn this over to our city clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that Align Vision Group be awarded the contract for the supply and installation of a video system for council chambers at a cost of $55,773, excluding HST. That a budget adjustment of $5,573 plus HST be funded from the Municipal Development Reserve, and that the mayor and clerk have the authority to execute the necessary agreement. That concludes the report.
Any speakers to the report? Seeing, go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you. I just think that this, so if I could ask just through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk. So currently we're paying approximately $10,000 per year?
It's approximately $12,000 per year.
12,000. So we'd be looking at almost a 5-year payback if we go with this contract of $55,000.
Yes, approximately.
Could I ask, okay, during these meetings, as we do now, Matt monitors the meetings. Would he be responsible to monitor the meetings in case there's technical difficulties, and would there be any cost associated with that?
At the beginning, I would imagine he would be here to assist us if there were any technical difficulties. But the system that we have, it is something that myself or the deputy clerk can manage in-house at no cost to us, because we'll be broadcasting this to our YouTube channel. So there's no ongoing cost. And I also want to mention that can I just add something else, Councillor Hanley? When we do have our own in-house service,
Go ahead.
We will be asking all of our committees of council to meet in the council chambers. So all of our committee meetings will be live streamed, and we'll be able to add special meetings such as the strategic planning meeting this Saturday, as well as budget. So we'll have more flexibility, I guess you can say, as to what we choose to stream, as opposed to just council meetings.
Okay, and we're planning on streaming all committee meetings. Is that connected to this?
That's correct.
Okay, one other thing is, okay, in regards to what the situation we're in now, COVID, I believe the current contract ends when this one starts, obviously, right? December 2020, the current contract ends?
That's correct.
So after that date, if we are not in council chambers and we are doing meetings as we are now, that system basically we wouldn't be using, right? We'd have to do Zoom like we are now?
You'd still use it, Councillor Hanley, because they're still using it to project in council chambers myself, and the meetings still run, so there'll still be a central use to that. Would still be required.
As it is tonight, that's my thing, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm good with that. My thing was, the payback, and after the 5.5 years and that stuff, with regards to it and that stuff, I just wanted to see who was going to be monitoring the cost of it, and basically, I was happy with the WeeStream thing myself, but I guess that's not viable now, and this is the way of the future. But I know that we have our own IT guy in house and that stuff, and I guess that's what's going to happen. But thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, then, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. He should be back. Okay. CC 2020-37. I have a mover, Councillor Sentence. Is he back?
I'm back.
Okay. Second.
Just no picture.
Yeah, your video's not on.
No.
If you hit in the bottom, you should be able to hit that start video button.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that council waive section 6.2 of the disposition of real property policy for the potential sale of a property on Towpath Road, part of Township Lot 222. That concludes the report.
Okay, is there any questions for our city clerk regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Notices of motion? Seeing none, before we move into closed meeting, we have, before we go into closed session, we will pass bylaws number 94-2020 and 116-2020 to 124-2020. So, right? Well, there's no one. Anyway, I have a mover, Councillor DeRose, seconder, Councillor Decker, that these bylaws be read a first time and do pass. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Final reading of the bylaws. Do I have the full language here? That these bylaws now be read a second, and see if I can remember it all. Second and third time and do pass, signed, sealed by city clerk and the mayor. And all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I got to remember all this stuff because I don't have all the language. Okay. Now, we're going to go into closed session. And I'll read the following. In accordance with Section 239 in the Municipal Act, a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is related to a potential disposition of municipal land. Can I have a motion to go into closed session to discuss the city clerk's verbal report regarding Niagara Falls Road property? I need a motion, Councillor DeRose, seconded by Councillor Decker. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we'll now move into closed session. Are we going to do that?